Okay guys, so I'm gonna ask you like, what do you know about famine and poverty and how they relate to each other? Also, how natural disasters influence famine and hunger in IT. And you can give me a short answer right now, and then we're gonna present, and you're gonna give me your final answer with the new information we give you. So, can you answer the question? How does famine and hunger is influenced by poverty and natural disasters?
Well,
like whatever you think, it doesn't have to be.
Famine is related closely to poverty, as people do not have enough resources to buy food. They usually starve, and usually in developing countries and underdeveloped countries, we find poverty to be closely related to famine.
I think that poverty is related to hunger because they don't have, as Jorge said, they don't have the resources to buy food, and they don't have the education enough to provide to their family, and that affects it.
Famine and hunger in IT, and specifically how the famine and poverty in IT is related with natural disasters and low education levels and poverty. So, for example, in IT, there was an earthquake in 2010, and this destroyed a lot of homes and crops. And for example, there was an estimate by the UN that was a lot of money that was lost in this earthquake, and they lost this money. And for example, a farmer that feed himself with his farm crops now didn't have that food.
Yeah, like because of the earthquakes and the floods they had, the landlords didn't have even the food they needed, like for their family. So not taking in consideration the food they produce for the country, but the food they produce for themselves, like they also lost that.
Another important thing is that one of the important economic activities from IT is tourism, and many natural disasters destroy the attractions and all the parks and places for tourists to visit, and that's why IT didn't
get a lot of money or income, and they were like poor as a country. And also another like really important activity in IT is that the agriculture, it's about 60% of the GDP, and they lost most of it, as I already said, with the earthquake.
Tourism was a very important income for IT. Like even though the hotels and everything were like rebuilding and were almost like done, they said that like they closed their doors for the tourism because the country was also like still in a bad shape, if you can say like that. So they said that no tourism for almost 2 years. So that was a big impact in the economy. And this like all the no food production and the no income from tourism affect directly the hunger and famine in the country.
And the way it affected like the hunger and famine is because they didn't have any money to import food, and IT imports most of its food. It imports about 60% of all of its food, and when you specifically talk about rice, they import 80% of it. So like most of their food is import, and if they don't have money to buy the food, then they cannot feed their farmers and people that need to be fed, and then those people can't work and can't generate like money for the country. So it's like a vicious cycle that IT has been limping on since the earthquake and before.
Another important thing is that the education is very low in IT, so when you don't have a good education, then you can get a good job. to feed their own family. And when you have all these problems, the natural disasters, the no education, the low economical activities, and besides that, you have a very big birth rate, which is of 27.3, and the average is 16.7. So, like, there's a large population, and if you can even feed your family, you're going to be able to feed all the population of Haiti.
Another important point, and we think that this explains like really well why Haiti is so poor, is that most of its population, about 60%, lives in rural areas. And for example, most of the money comes from urban areas. So, and another thing is that about 70% of the economy is thanks to the 10% that is wealthiest in IT. So the other 30% of the economy is only of the 90 poorest percent in IT. And it's like there's not, like even though there's an average, it's like really sesquicated, like biased. It's a bias.
Here in our infographic, we have the background about IT's economical activities and some important facts that we already told you. And besides, we added a quote that says, "When people were hungry, Jesus didn't say, 'Is that political or social?' He said, 'I fed you because the good news to a hungry person is bread.'"
And we want to conclude that Haiti is like in this cycle, and that it needs a lot of help from other countries, but it needs to reorganize the way it is employing people and get higher education levels for all these societies. And that's it. And we would like to interview again Julian.
After our presentation, what do you think about our previous question?
I think that it is all vinculated, like the natural disasters and poverty, because without some, for example, for IT, the main income comes from natural resources and tourism. So after the hurricane, a lot of tourism decreased, and that led them to poverty, and that causes hunger and stuff.
I think now famine and poverty are related to diverse social factors and natural factors